Joanna.
Good morning, Venetia.
Hello, and here we are going to have our part two of our conversation, which is about your creative depth life coaching. And specifically in this talk, we're going to focus on your love of circle dance and sacred circle dance and how you incorporate that in your coaching sessions. And maybe just to clear up something, because I'm not that sure, what is the difference between someone who does circle dancing and what you offer and many others as sacred circle dancing? It's a slightly
Yes.
different wording, but it just might, people might be wondering.
Yes. Well, in answer to that question, in truth, all movement-based practices or processes such as dance and that we are talking about here, all processes that involve movement in the body are automatically engaging more than just one aspect of self or one part of ourselves in a process. So when you talk about sacred circle dance, there's an intention carried into the dance of making connections, of developing relationship to self, to others, to community, to the earth, to the cosmos. So there is an expansion of an understanding of dance as a healing force, up at this potential to heal us, to whole us, to bring us into harmony with our parts of self and with all. So that's a different intention, and it's a consciousness in the dance that can be used and developed among to quite a degree where we're addressing specific healings or self-transformative ways of being or processes to become whole. Circle dance it is not necessarily a conscious dance form. So there are a lot of it can be, but it's not. That's not the prerogative or the essence of it. That we go into dance and movement for the purposes of XXX. It's, I think, a kind of a lighter approach or a more communal approach to enjoying the dance for the sake of the dance, but not really with any particular motive of consciousness building, let's say. So, I mean, there are many people within the sacred circle dance movement who approach it differently as well. I mean, we all have our takeaway or what it is we're coming there for to do the dance, and not everybody would resonate to the spiritual aspects of the dance, but they are built into the dances. And in cultural dance, folk dances are about life, which is what spirituality is. So you're never separate from the whole spiritual context of the dance, regardless of its circle, if it's circle dance or sacred circle dance. But it's bringing consciousness to that and working with those elements in the dance that makes sacred circle dance a different entity, so to speak. And so, speaking about that conscious awareness of what it is we are doing together in the circle opens up a whole level and many levels of depth of experience that are available to us in the dance. And again, it comes back to that a relational experience. How do I relate to my life experience, my identity, and what I have experienced in my life, and how does that fit into the context of community? How do I relate to others in community? Where is my level of safety within community? All these are some of the themes that we work with in sacred circle dance. And because we're human and divine beings, and because we're in a community of dance while we're dancing, all of those um, life experiences, issues, whatever it is that humans are always working out together, come to the fore. So we are a community like any other community. We're learning how to be community, and where are those places within each of us and within community that need attention or that are brought up through the dance. And that's because we experience it when we move in our bodies. Our rhythmicity in the body, that is a main function of music and dance. The rhythmicity, it relates directly to our emotional level, our emotions, our experience of life. So rhythmicity is the essence of life as it's happening in an embodied experience. and our emotions are very closely married to that experience. So we can't go through life without having a bodily experience. Whether or not we pay attention to that is the question, and how that informs our living through somatic healing, which is part of what the sacred circle dance does, whether we're conscious of it or not. Anytime we enter into the rhythmicity of music, anytime we move the body in a certain way, we are already connecting to emotion. We're connecting to past experience that involved emotion. So we're going to feel some sort of stirring up of things that are both wonderful, highs and delights, and also not the not so wonderful or the difficult experiences we've also had, because we carry those with us. And they are part of our physicality. Actually, they are, when we have a trauma, for instance, it gets stored in the body in some area. We've talked about this in terms of sounding through that part of the sound, using sound to connect to an experience we've had that might be stored in the body as illness, or as even stiffness, or a stagnancy in a part of the body. And the same for dance. When we move into dance, we immediately meet up with those parts of our body that are not quite responding in the way we like, or not quite flowing, or are maybe stiff or uncomfortable. And so we have the opportunity to address those through the movement, and with consciousness, and even with specific processes that we can unfold that at ever deeper levels, to really do the work that stuckness is challenging us to do. So our original group in Ontario was facilitated by Barbara Stokes, and brilliantly she married music and dance, and singing and dance. And I think that's a fundamental part of sacred circle dance, which in a lot of ways has been lost in translation over the years, particularly in our part of the world, where we tend to be over intellectualized, which has all kinds of implications. But in the case of dance, we've all kind of buried our voices. And what I found when I first was learning sacred circle dance from Barbara is that when you sing and dance at the same time, it is a different experience than dancing alone or singing alone. And of course, I discovered this in my vocal coaching in the past, working with individuals with their voicing in particular, was that if I gave them a rhythmic motion, or a walking motion, or a gesture while they were singing something, it would suddenly unlocked a capacity that was not tapped into yet, that made their singing better, or made their voice more natural, or made the experience of what they were singing suddenly click into a different level in their being, so that they could take it in and work with it with more ease, with more confidence, with more sense of self involved. And that's what I try to do most in my circles, is to have people sing while they dance whenever possible. And so I've done local circles in person for many years in different cities I've lived in. And I've also been on Zoom for the last 2 years, facilitating a weekly sacred circle dance with a tiny group of souls who have been exploring many things together and through the dance, exploring seasonal celebrations and festivals. Definitely those, connecting to the full moon, the new moon, just these parts of our human divine experience that are rhythmic in the season, a rhythmicity over time, right, in the cycle of life, and the cycle of the seasons, which is very close to my heart, as I'm a nature person. And we've incorporated sometimes art making, we've incorporated ritual, we've explored spirituality, because when I work with dance, the spiritual connection is fundamental to the experience. So that's been I have also, I just finished offering a course at Niskaya. This was done online because I don't live near Niskaya, in sound healing with the voice, sounding through the chakras, as well as movements. So it was called soul song. So we used movement, we used sacred circle dance, we used gesture, we used sound, we used natural sounding of the voice, a mantra, and some art making to really understand the energy centers in the body, the chakra energy centers, and how we can open those energies so that they function fully.
Mm-hmm. And in our first conversation, you were mentioning how you brought in Eurythmy, and now you're saying you bring in sound and movement. Do you bring in Eurythmy as well into the circle dance, or is that a totally different section? You keep it separate?
Um, I have used I for me everything interweaves. So I have used Eurythmy aspects at times for dance, especially as we're in Zoom land where we're not actually in a circle holding hands. It actually opened up a possibility for people to connect more with their inner life and to work with themselves, not only in the continuum of community, but how do I explore myself here? And Eurythmy brings it all down to that level of the deepest understanding of the most subtle gestures and how that affects my whole being when I, for instance, I open. So I'll give you an example. If I open this way, I'm expanding. It's an expanding gesture. And then if I come in this way, it's a contracting or releasing or coming inward gesture. And this is basically what we're doing throughout our lives every moment. We're either moving toward expanding or opening to a new idea, a new a choice, a new direction, a different way, a shifting gears during the day from a quiet activity to a more active activity. Those are all expanding gestures. Coming down into a stillness, a moment of quiet or reflection, or having a pause in the activity, that's an example of contraction or moving inward. And that's constantly happening in our lives on all levels. But when I actually introduce that as a gesture to music or to sound with, or to just breathe with, this gesture is already opening up and moving things and moving myself in a direction of receptivity, which this is not the same as. This is moving inward to receive what's happening here, and both are totally necessary. So it's really the whole of life and the whole of healing is all, and the whole of becoming the whole movement of becoming whole, becoming a body, mind, spirit continuum, and having a flow between all these beings or parts of being. It's all about how do we consciously move from contraction to expansion in any given moment. So I need to be able to focus in on something and be very contractual, like I'm very, the details, I have to be able to do that, but I also have to be able to step away and see this in the context of the bigger picture, and not get lost so much in this that I forget, oh yes, well, there's a bigger story happening here, and how does this work within that? Because if I can't pull away, it has implications on all levels. I can't see the forest for the trees, or I can't put my present moment experience into a context of my whole life so that I have a perspective on it that might be very different than if I'm just totally focused in. So this is where dance and movement and even a particular gesture can unlock that capacity to move from point to periphery. And that's really at the heart of all of our human experiences. We're constantly moving between the two. We don't tend to do it consciously. And that's the key, is if I can do it consciously, all of a sudden I'm accessing it in a way that I can then use that in a life situation, that skill, that capacity to either pull away from an experience and gain a different perspective, or move into an experience that I've wanted to not move into because it's not easy to deal with. That kind of an idea.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I imagine, especially if you've been doing it on Zoom during the last 2 years or so, when everybody was in lockdown or whatever, and which was quite a contracted state.
Yeah.
I imagine being able to actually expand, even if it's just in their living rooms, when you gave those classes, was a breathing out gesture, if you like, which must have, I imagine, helped a lot. Um,
Yes, and it's interesting actually to see how difficult that is for people to do generally, even in non-Zoom, non-COVID times, like where to expand to this level, it requires a level of trust and vulnerability. Yeah, I can't do that if I'm protecting myself. So there are interesting gestures for that as well, like a protection gesture in Eurythmy. This is the A vowel, so it's a particular vowel sound that goes with that is really necessary. It's a boundary setting vowel and gesture, and we need both. We need to be able to do both. But it's interesting to me to see how, again, a person's personal repertoire of movements tells me everything I need to know about that person and where their areas of struggle are, and I don't need to hear a word from them. When I see them move, I can tell you, we can see in the movement where there's too much contraction or not, an inability to expand, and that generally is the experience of trauma. We become contracted because we're protecting from the traumatic experience.
mm,
So unlocking that, even in just a gesture, you don't even need to tell your story. A gesture unlocks it. It can unlock it, and if we incrementally create enough safety for people to explore, how might it be if I shifted into this gesture, even this much openness from this to this is a big movement for a lot of people.
mm,
So especially for traumatized people. So these are the finer aspects of how somatic experience, whether it's through art creation of some sort of art making form, because there's a lot of expressive arts healing modalities, or whether it's movement and dance, sounding with movement. All of those things are ways to unlock that contracted experience and to let it breathe, so it has space to move and change.
yes. And is there a specific music you prefer to use in your sacred circle dance sessions? Say like a comparison between certain music which will be like a catalyst for people perhaps who are feeling vulnerable and didn't dare do that movement or didn't feel safe to do that movement, and you knew the music would help encourage that movement, and versus perhaps a group who maybe had been feeling a bit contracted or but not necessarily traumatized, just a bit bleh, say after the winter or something, and to energize them. Is there a particular repertoire of music or musicians you have in your toolkit?
Well, I mean, again, it's always about the in breath and the out breath, expansion, contraction in the musics as well. Which music, how do we balance it out? So even within a context of what particular session of sacred circle dance, we've been taught traditionally to work it in a certain way where you have a climax of energy of the fast, very out extroverted type dances in the center, in the middle of the evening, for instance, and then we begin to slow down after that and coming back down into a more peaceful or calm ending. Even just that process itself is 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 um, is is a natural in breath out breath that we need in an experience, say for a 2 hour experience of dance. And the music will reflect that overall movement, what we choose, the kinds of dances we choose, the type of dance it is, how complicated it is to learn, for instance. I mean, there's so many levels and or so many types of dances that require, or offer us actually different experiences of just as broad a palette as human experience is. So I like it all. I mean, it all has a purpose. So there's a purpose behind the traditional folk culture dances. Uh, there's a purpose behind the contemporary musics, of how we express ourselves, in a way that maybe wasn't dreamt of by our ancestors. So there's all. It's both and. Certainly, when you're using meditative music or long dances, you're talking about a whole experience of deepening into our mind, body, spirit continuum, deepening into connection to the earth, to our ancestors. There's and community. It has a purpose behind it when we talk about the meditative dances. And I would have to say that those are favorites of mine in a sense. And there's many artists that we use. Music that doesn't have words in it, that has no singer, but has only instrumental, is really important to balance out all the singing music, because it's the singing music can keep us in our heads, and that we don't want to keep thinking so much that we don't experience what's happening in the body through dance and what's going on. So that's one of the important aspects of what I do, is to make sure we have a balance between instrumental and sung music, which has a specific message. The instrumental music has its own message, but it's taken in a different way when we don't get our heads too involved in the process. And of course, musics that lend themselves more to a communal experience, musics that lend themselves more to deepening into the internal experience. So, and both end in some pieces. So it's very individual as to what, so seasonal themes first, what's going on in the cosmos, what's happening with the moon right now, what's happening with this season in our part of the world, how can I dress when it's another part of the world who's with us, the other half that are experiencing the opposite season. How do we incorporate all of that into the movement?
How do you?
Yeah, good question. Good question. That's a great
somebody
question.
in Australia at New Year, for example.
It's interesting because it's obvious that I'm going to be teaching, for me, living in my atmosphere, or my seasonal reality. I'm going to be resonating to that, and those who live here will be resonating to it in a specific way because they're here in it. And I think that's okay. I'm only going to be able to offer so much to someone specific to their season if it's not the one I'm in myself. And that to me is part of the authenticity of it. I want to experience it. But there are commonalities in between seasons, even. Like there are certain things that you can turn one direction or turn the other depending on which way you're going, and you can work with that. And then of course there are many dances that have nothing to do with season, and they have more to do maybe with the human seasons, like being the youth, being the mother, being the crone, like those things are universal. So a lot of the dance would be inclusive of those universal dances that don't have to do with physical seasons or earth seasons, but have to do with human seasons. So you weave it all in as a facilitator to incorporate, so that you don't have all spring dances only tonight, those, if you have that, people in your group are from the other side of the globe. So yeah, it depends on your people too.
You did mention in the first conversation about Eurythmy, but you also do pan-Eurythmy, and I'm not sure I know what pan-Eurythmy is in comparison to Eurythmy, and you weave that in with the circle dancing as well, don't you?
Yes, I do. Pan-Eurythmy is a form of conscious spiritual movement dance that is meant to. It's been channeled by Master Donav, and it's a way of harmonizing all of the cosmos, of the earth, of the human, all as one whole. So it's really reestablishing the connectedness between all beings, and it has specific movements and gestures and movements across the ground, and is normally done outside in nature. So this is a really powerful healing practice as well, and it really feeds into Eurythmy back and forth. In fact, they were both conceived; those movements were conceived at the same time by contemporaries in their time who were spiritual pathfinders, I would say, or path makers. So where Eurythmy takes gestures of sound and puts them through our being as a spiritual practice to connect to all our bodies, pan-Eurythmy does the same, but it tends to do it in a just a sort of another branch, another variation, or another way of doing it. So another set of sequences. And so these two I incorporate into the Sacred Circle dance. And traditionally, our Sacred Circle dance community in Ontario here has always included pan-Eurythmy in our dance camps, because it's an early morning practice that we do out in the field, out in nature, to greet the rising sun, for instance. That's one of the parts of the practice. So between Eurythmy and pan-Eurythmy and sacred circle dance, to me, these are all expressions of our embodiment of spirit, our embodiment of divinity into this human experience, and how we can experience it in different forms, in different ways, for different purposes, all of which end up being healing processes in their own right, and which really unite mind, body, and spirit as one continuum in connection with every other being, whether human or non-human, or more than human, or in the physical or non-physical. Is the connection of all.
That's fantastic. Anything else you'd like to finish with? Because I think it's a great way to finish, encompassing everything.
I wouldn't mind finishing with one thing. So we are vibratory beings, and everything in the universe vibrates. And so when we move, we dance, we sing, we create, we are harmonizing or bringing into balance our vibratory field in all the bodies we have. We've got more than one body beyond the physical. And when we bring those into harmony, we are serving the whole community in the best possible way, because we're harmonizing within. And once that happens, we can begin to extend that outwards to a world that can find its way into harmony.
Great. And you're going to be giving us a demonstration at the end when we finish, and so people can actually see what you do, what you offer, and some snippets of circle dancing. So thank you so much, Joanna, for talking to me twice, and again with Zoom, riding over the waves of Zoom tech problems.
Thank you, Venetia, and I'm grateful to be here.
Lovely, thank you. Bye.
Bye, take care. Thanks a lot for all of that. That's been fantastic.